These are some rules compiled by artists over the ages to help show depth in your picture without using linear perspective. I hope to go into linear perspective in some depth at a later time, but these are simple tricks that have been used by artists over the centuries. They're very effective, especially when you put them all together. When you're on a flat surface like this, the first thing you want to look at is surface placement. When things are placed on the ground, like a tree trunk, or something standing on the ground, a table, an animal, what have you, the higher on the page that you draw something standing on the ground, the farther back in space it will tend to look. Because as we look out in front of us towards the ground, everything farther from us on the ground is actually farther away from us. And we learned that at an early age. So by placing the bottoms of these objects higher and higher on the page, I can make the trees look like they go farther from us. You can see that there are 3 trees that I'm drawing here, just the trunks, and I'm drawing a little bit of roots going into the ground. We don't even see the ground. You just see one after another. These could be animals' legs. They could be anything placed upon a flat surface of the ground going away from you, and they just appear farther and farther away. The next basic rule is size differential. When things are supposed to be the same size and you draw them different sizes, the smaller ones look farther away and the larger ones will tend to look closer to you. This is because the closer something gets to you, the more of your visual field it engulfs. If you put your hand in your face, all you can see is hand. Take it away farther from you, it looks smaller and smaller as it goes farther and farther away. So here I'm going to draw some flowers at different sizes. Also notice that I'm using my surface placement. They're going to be going up the page as they get smaller and smaller, and they will look farther and farther away. My next rule is called overlapping. If you put something so that it blocks out something else, or you draw something so it's coming out from behind something, you can tell which one is supposed to be in front and which one is supposed to be behind. When something blocks your vision, you know that it must be closer to you than something that is farther away and is blocked by whatever the object may be. So here we have some flowers that are overlapping behind this bigger flower, and they must be farther away because we can only see parts of them. So here's a quick review. Surface placement, overlapping, and size differential. So I'm going up the page with these circles. They're getting smaller and overlapping as they go back in space. My fourth rule is use of surface line or cross contours, meaning that if you put contour lines along surfaces to create textures and you go around surfaces with your lines, you will create form out of your shapes and the illusion of depth, at least in a limited space, across objects. This can be as simple as putting things like bark on trees, like I'm doing here, or by finding individual shapes, like these circles, and I'm using what are called cross contour lines here, going with the surface of the object, making them look more and more rounded. It gives an illusion in part of shading, but it also shows you around the object. And I can do the same thing with the petals and leaves on a plant, or I can do the same thing with three-dimensional objects, some of the classic objects. So for the classic objects, I'm going to show you a cylinder using cross contour. Notice that the lines are rounded with the top and the bottom. And I'm going to show you a sphere, which is a circle at first, and then the rounded lines will go around and around the object, not straight across it. That would defeat the purpose. And then I'm going to show you a cone, and they go around and round, mirroring the bottom of the cone. And then the cube will have straight cross contours, but they're going to go with the sides and top and bottom straight across at the same angle as each of the sides. So there's cross contours of the 4 basic objects. My next rule is value or shading, showing depth by showing shadow. And as you can see, I'm going to start on these objects. I'm going to go right across my cross contour lines, and I'm going to put in some shading. I'm going to use a blending stump to get it nice and smooth. And shading these objects will give them more of a feeling of form and a feeling of depth on this paper. The next rule is the rule of detail, which also includes contrast and density. The farther something is away from you, the less detail you will see, and the less contrast you will see between the lights and the darks. Things tend to fade out as they get farther from you. This is very apparent on a foggy morning. Leonardo da Vinci called it the perspective of disappearance, although he used color in his, and I'm not going to bring color in until rule number 8. 7 is the concept of foreshortening. As something changes its angle to you, the shapes actually shift and change like a puzzle, and they appear to go back in space. So cylinders will change their shape on the end, circles will become ovals, squares will become rectangles. This is part of the basis of linear perspective, but you can do this without actually using a fully systematic method like that. So here I'm drawing some shapes extruded through space by showing you one end and then pulling them back at an angle from you. The final rule here is color. And while this does go in part hand in hand with value, which is part of number 5 in shading, color has its own mechanic. Cool colors tend to recede in space to our eye, and warm colors will tend to pop closer to us. Leonardo da Vinci pointed out that as things get farther and farther away across a great distance, they become more blue with an atmospheric haze. So blue we're going to put as the farthest color away, whereas yellow, orange, red, they will tend to pop towards us, especially when they're bright. So in quick review, we have surface placement, size difference, overlapping, surface, cross-contour lines, value and shading, detail, contrast, density, foreshortening, and color. No one of these is 100% effective, but when used together, these basic rules can create a convincing feeling of depth on a flat surface.